Hello, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Catherine Koutris, and today I will be presenting a brief overview and examination of the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C's, accessibility standards, specifically how they relate to the following three ideas: accessibility, usability, and inclusion. Let's get started. Before I dive into the content of the presentation, I would like to briefly explain the plan for the presentation. Firstly, I will outline the three main learning objectives that I hope you take away with you. Then I will dive into the three main concepts, looking at how they relate to and how they differ from each other. Finally, I will pose a discussion/reflection question for your learning enhancement at the end of each section. So let's look at our three main learning objectives. Firstly, I hope that after today's presentation, you begin to understand what accessibility, usability, and inclusion means. Secondly, I hope you begin to understand why web accessibility is important. Thirdly, I hope that you're able to brainstorm ideas of how these concepts can be applied in web design. First, let's look at how these concepts differ from each other. We can begin with accessibility. According to the W3C, accessibility focuses on how design decisions can discriminate against people with disabilities. Essentially, web accessibility is supposed to be accessible for users of all abilities. This means that everyone should be able to perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with websites and tools equally. It also means that they can contribute equally without barriers. Web accessible design can look like incorporating high contrast visual design like dark mode or large text on your website, or keyboard navigation, or text-to-speech functions. It's like providing all users the metaphorical key to the website so that everyone can access the content within. I pose to you now a question. How can web designers ensure that their sites are accessible? How can they maximize their success in this endeavor? Moving on to the second concept, which is usability. According to the W3C, web design usability refers to how easily a user interacts with a website. This is all about being able to effectively use the tools that you are posting online or in an application format. The W3C says it's about designing products to be effective, efficient, and satisfying. Essentially, is your user able to use your product no matter what their abilities are? Usability practice, quote, and research often does not sufficiently address the needs of people with disabilities, end quote. That being said, the way that you can make sure that your website or application is usable or user-friendly is to make sure there are no broken links, that the search features are easy to use, as is the navigation. It can also mean that if your website or app is available in multiple formats, that all of those versions can be used effectively. A great way to measure if you are targeting usability is to measure user satisfaction. After all, a user who cannot get what they want from your product certainly won't be happy. I pose to you now this question. Can you think of some examples of user-friendly or non-user-friendly websites? Moving on to inclusivity. According to the W3C, web design choices will affect the experiences of all users, regardless of their abilities. Inclusivity is about having a holistic approach to web design, essentially. It's about diversity and acknowledging that users come from very different kinds of backgrounds. It can address the following and I quote from the W3C, computer literacy and skills, economic situation, education, culture, age, and language, etc., end quote. This is about making sure that no matter where you stand, you are able to use the product and use it in an equitable way, getting the same experience from it, not having a separate service created for you so that you are standing on the sidelines. I pose to you now this question. Can you think of any apps or websites that you currently use that operate inclusively? I would now like to look at how these concepts overlap. Starting with accessibility and usability. The terms are often conflated and used interchangeably, although in reality they're not, as we have discussed. At this point, it's critical to understand that disabled people and people with different needs should be consulted at all stages of your web design and implementation process. Essentially, we want to look at how accessibility and usability help all web users. Many accessibility requirements improve usability for everyone, especially in limiting situations. For example, providing sufficient contrast benefits people using the web on a mobile device, in bright sunlight, or in a dark room, not just people who have limited vision in any situation. Captions benefit people in noisy and in quiet environments as well, not just people perhaps with auditory disabilities. Really, if you are accessible in your design and easy to use, everyone wins. Moving on to accessibility and inclusivity. Remember that unlike just accessibility, which focuses on disability specifically, inclusive design bears in mind people of all backgrounds and abilities. So this could be people who do not speak English as a first language. It could also mean people who are new and infrequent users of whatever technology that your website is hosted on. This is about making sure that people from diverse backgrounds and with diverse abilities are front and center in your mind in the creation of your website or application. Essentially, as the W3C states, quote, "This is a broader spectrum of abilities and characteristics to consider, which is why studies on specific accessibility issues are necessary to improve both accessibility and inclusivity in web design, as one lends itself to the other as necessary," end quote. I would now like for you to reflect on the following question. What are examples of some consequences of not being in compliance with W3C accessibility standards for web design? At this point, I welcome any questions that you might have about the content presented here today. I would also like to know if there's anything inaccessible about this presentation. I invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns in the comment section at the bottom of the WordPress blog on which this video will be hosted, as well as in the comment section of the YouTube page where I have uploaded this video. Thank you very much for listening today, and I hope that you took away something new about web accessibility standards from the W3C today. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.